All right, I'm here with Lucas Fox, the original drummer of Motorhead, who's done beyond that just a bunch of amazing projects and is writing a book called In and Out Motorhead. I've started reading the book and it's fantastic. One of the things that really struck me was uh, your use of poetic language throughout the book. And like some of the imagery is so vivid. I mean, obviously, when you were doing Acid, that was a great piece because you really captured that. But even things like you were talking about a leather jacket, and I forget how the language was, but it was like knives coming out of the jacket or something. But you use imagery in such a captivating way that it feels like I'm reading song lyrics that are singing to me out of the book. And I don't, so tell me like what your idea was behind this and if I'm actually capturing what you were going for.
Yeah, you absolutely are, Eric. And hi there, and thank you very much for this interview. I really appreciate it. And hi there to anybody who's listening to it. Keep on rocking. Um, if you like, when I started this book, I started out. The idea started the last time I saw Lemmy in 2018 at the Zenith in Paris, and we hadn't seen each other for like 15 years. And when I came back to my house, I sat on the edge of the bed, sort of, really emotional, not sad at all. It was just like very powerful emotions coming out. And I've got a skylight above my bed, and bizarrely, at my feet, all these images were coming up and going through the skylight. Like it was like really strange. And I realized that all of it was in there. It was just a question of how to get to it. So I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, it's all these memories are like time capsules. I'll give you an example. My mum used to wear Chanel number 5. If I smell Chanel number 5 walking past me, I've got my mother standing in front of me. So I managed to trigger the subconscious in my brain to go back into all these memories, story by story by story. And they were just like little mini films. And this is the way memory works. You don't actually record memory like you do a history class, 1776, whatever it is, the independence of the states, whatever. It doesn't record like that. It records with everything that's happening in around you. It's the smells, it's the colors. I think that's the way I record anyway. And so I managed to very late at night, most nights, start just writing out the chapter headings. And I did about, I don't know, 50 or 60 chapter headings. And then I started filling in the flesh on the bones of this. And then the book started to come, and it wrote itself. Um, every time I was on a story, whether it be me as a child or growing up, and then you know my first drum kits that I washed cars for because we were broke.
Love that
Um,
story.
um, and but it all came out like cinema. So I couldn't write it any other way. I couldn't write it like a normal autobiography or biography, whatever they're called. I couldn't write it that way at all. And it just came out this way. So I started, and it just became fascinating as to plunging back into these time capsules of all the way through from the 50s when I was a nipper, when I was a child, and through the 60s, the swinging 60s in London, and the colours. Suddenly, everything burst into colour in the 60s after being so black and white in the 50s. When I was a child, every single street of London, because of the Blitz, had the shit bombed out of us in 1940, and every single street had houses missing, these great big craters. In the street, I was also seeing the air crews badly burned. It was horrible to see. The poor bastards. They were, almost completely disfigured. So I was growing up with that, and then the '60s happened, and it all burst into color, and it was just so all of that is the way I started writing the book. If that helps.
That helps a lot. I'm curious because when you sent me the original manuscript, you sent me the version in French, which my French is very minuscule. It's
Sorry about that.
no, it's fine. It's I tried to learn French years ago, and I was speaking.
Pilot error.
Oh, I tried to speak French with with a Midwestern accent, and I was in Montreal. They're like, oh no, 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 we speak English. Please don't do this to our language. But I'm curious, like, are you writing in English or French? Because it's
Well, well, I was educated from the age of 4 to 17 at the French Lycée in London because, again, it's one of these wonderful questions. How did someone well educated, well brought up, although we didn't have any money, from a middle to upper class family on one side? My mother was a kind of aristocrat with no money, and my father was a Cockney, right? And so it's a real mix. And my father was obsessed by French culture, food, culture, paintings, Van Gogh, all that stuff. And my mother was in the RAF, in the WAF, which is the Women's Air Force, during the war. And she was the commandant of the most secret base in Britain,
oh wow.
and sending all the agents over to France and all over Europe. But she particularly struck it up with the French for all sorts of cultural reasons. I mean, the French and the English are the best of enemies. They're like brother and sister fighting. So when it came to us arriving, my sister and I, they wanted to have European kids. They didn't have typical English or British kids. And so they sent us to the French lycée. So I was educated in French, although they didn't speak French. And so from the age of 4 to 7 or something, I was in a complete fog. You know? But also, weirdly enough, writing this book, I realized that I was a heavy asthmatic when I was a child, even though I smoke now, fuck it. But and so I was using maybe this amount of my lungs. Where's the camera? There we are. This
Okay.
amount of my lungs, and therefore not oxygenating my brain properly. Therefore, I would drift off into dream
Hmm.
regularly. And even now, I can drift off into dream just like that. I can float into it, which gave me access to all these memories,
Yeah.
bizarrely.
No, but
Because of I was a very handicapped child. I couldn't run and stuff, couldn't do sports, all that stuff. So that was the question. How did someone well educated, bilingual, bicultural, get to start the meanest, most horrible rock and roll band in the world? And that's kind of this is the response to that.
all right, that's cool. That's cool. And and again, I can't say enough. Like when I read those stories, I could feel it, I could see it, I could taste it, I could smell like the imagery you created was so I'm going to use a German term, Gestalt.
Yeah,
Like it's just so holistic.
that was my third language. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I did 7 years of German.
Oh God, I'm still trying to
Mein Deutsch ist, mein Deutsch ist schrecklich. Entschuldige bitte.
Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. It's the grammar is what kills me. But yeah, I can see that though because it's like you're making you're basically taking these dreams and giving them life. You're breathing into them and it's really quite gorgeous.
Oh,
Um
thank you.
yeah. So t tell us like I know you picked up Lemmy at the airport after Hawkwind, but how did you guys click? I think you in the book you talk a little bit about like 50s music and stuff.
Yeah, 50s and 60s music, particularly. Well, this was a big surprise because Lemmy was in Hawkwind, which was a progressive space rock band, right?
Right.
And I was expecting. I mean, we met at the Speakeasy. We were introduced by Motorcycle Irene, who was a girlfriend of mine of long date, and very very close friends as well. We hung out a lot, and so at the Speakeasy, which was the club where you had to be, where everybody went, Townsend, Stones, etc., in the 60s. And I managed to con my way into the Speakeasy and have a membership card at the age of 17 as opposed to 21. I was the same height of I am now at 17. And that allowed me to understand better about rock and roll and about this new language, bad meant good, oh, that's really bad, man, and all that stuff. So when we were standing at the bar, apart from he told me a stupid Tommy Cooper joke, who is a really really silly British comedian. Um, and then after that, we started talking music, and I was really surprised that he wasn't asking me about Yes or Genesis or any of the progressive, ELP or any of the progressive rock bands at all, or even Pink Fairies, or no, we just hit it off straight away into early '60s music, British in particular, the Stooges as well, but all of that, loads of bands that people don't really know, and we just hit it off straight away because we had this in common. And then, of course, the Second World War, which we were both obsessed by.
Yeah, well, tell me some of the '60s bands that were influential to both of you.
The list is long. Pretty Things, Easy Beats, um, the English Birds with Ronnie Wood, who then joined the
Oh,
Stones later. Wonderful band, wonderful band. Loads, But again, I used to see most of these bands when I was like 14 or 15 at the Marquee Club, because I used to go there from the age of 14 or something all the way through to 19 or something. So I saw Led Zeppelin in front of 400 people when they started. It was just, so this was my kind of self-enforced education, because I was so obsessed from the age of 9 by drums and drumming, um, that we just hit it off on all those bands. I mean, I can dig you up a list if it helps. I can give you a whole playlist of all the bands that influenced Motorhead. There's like 60 or
if time
70 of
sometime,
them.
I'd love that. Yeah.
But of course, including Little Richard and Chuck Berry and loads of American bands as well. But again, it's that thing that after the war there was a thing called skiffle groups, who were very poor, and there were 250,000 of them in Britain at the time after the war. Everyone had been, like, you remember the old English expression for the Yanks, was overpaid, oversexed, and over here, and they came over with all their record collections, which
Okay.
of course kicked off all these young kids coming out of the war, where their parents, their fathers were, spread all over the globe in various parts of what was already a bankrupt empire, and all the mothers were working in factories or driving ambulances or fire engines, or and or like my mother in the WAF, or like my aunt in the Wrens, who were the women's navy,
Mhm.
or the women's land army. So the kids in London and in all the towns, the ones that weren't evacuated, basically were playing in bomb sites and selling rings and watches on the black market. And so they are the people who became these skiffle groups, thousands of them, and all trying to imitate the American bands, but doing it in their own way. Because there were so many of them, everybody had to be different. Now, in those skiffle groups in the early '60s, we were also Pete Townsend, the guy at the Hollies who joined, Crosby, Stills, Nash,
Mhm.
um, John Lennon. They were all in skiffle groups, and that's how the whole thing started. Where they suddenly, but by that, 5 or 6 years later, they were really proficient in their craft, and they were rock and roll bands. So it's that swallowing all the American influences and spitting them out with their own way of seeing things. I mean, the Kinks, totally different to the Who totally different. I mean, the Who, John Entwistle, his bass sound was what influenced Lemmy.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, Boris the Spider, Boris the Spider. I mean, that the bass sound on that, or even on My Generation, the first bass solos
I was,
in history.
which is,
Dum
I
diddle
was,
dum diddle dum diddle dum dum. I mean, all that stuff.
yeah.
So Lemmy and I just hit it off immediately on this. We also had the same sense of humor: Monty Python, Forty Towers, The Goon Show. Spike Milligan, all these crazy British characters who had this different way of seeing humor as well. So we had this humor in common, the music in common. As I say, I was so surprised that he was into this stuff, because I was expecting him to come out with all the progressive rock bands, Amon Düül in Germany and stuff. But no, not at all. It was, and of course the Second World War, which we were both obsessed by for different reasons.
So I can see how, I mean, it's interesting because I always think of Motorhead as, Lemmy used to, what do you refer to as a rock and roll band, but it's
Yep.
really almost anybody I know who plays punk or metal, Motorhead's the foundation.
Yeah.
And
Well,
everything, like, it's like Motorhead was the parent and the rest of us just kind of were spawned by that.
I think so. I mean, Lemmy always denied any kind of link to heavy metal or speed metal or any of the death metal or any of the others. But of course, of course he is. Of course he is. And of course, Filthy, who came after me, who invented, the double bass drum thing,
Yeah.
which although Keith Moon, John Heisman, all these other guys had double bass, Ginger Baker, they all had double bass drums. So they didn't use it like that. They didn't use it like a, I don't know, like a German bomber sound, dugga 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 dugga, or a Harley, so yeah,
That's very cool. So, um, from there you went and you worked with the band Warsaw Pact.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that was one hell of an experience. Great band, I loved it. I loved it. Andy, well, they were already going before me, and then I replaced their drummer because their drummer wasn't up to scratch. Here we go again, It's, the ways of rock and roll bands, and yeah, and a great band. And we spent, Andy and I, the guitarist, alone together. We spent hours and hours and nights and in the bunker, which they built as a rehearsal studio underneath a famous shop in Portobello Road, which had caught fire. So it was, it reeked of the fire and the fire damage, And so yeah, that started out, and then we went into Island Studios because Mim Scala, who was a brilliant guy, who was our manager, became our manager. He had the silly idea of wanting to record an album overnight because we're in punk, because we're in new wave. It kind of felt like do it yourself, do it really fast, get it out,
Okay, okay.
right? Mm. And Island Records, we therefore signed to Island Records, and Chris Blackwell of Island Records finally gave in to the idea, and it worked. We literally went into the studio at 10, set up, started recording at 11, recorded side one in one go, straight down to disc.
Wow.
Therefore, the mix was done in the studio, and then it went up 3 stories to the cutting lathe, and it went straight down to the cutting lathe. And I mean, I love the album, but unfortunately, they were so terrified of blowing the needle. One bit of feedback, it would blow the needle. And the needle was worth, like, even in those days, like 10 grand or something.
Oh,
Right. So they were terrified of that.
yeah.
So the guitars are a little bit polite in comparison of what they were live. But so we recorded side one, side two, side one, side two, side one, side two, 3 times, and then picked the best sides. And then Mim Scala had a gangster mate of his with a sports car, and they roared up the motorway, the highway, to the place to get it processed. These acetates, get them processed, and then they in breakneck they break all the speed records, and completely illegal, and drove down to West Drayton, it's near Heathrow Airport, and set up the pressing and pressed 5,000 in a night. Meanwhile, three of us of the Warsaw Pact, me, Johnny Walker, and Andy Colquhoun, signed and stamped every single five of those 5,000 brown craft sleeves. So we made our own sleeves at the same time. At the same time, I mean, all of it started at the same moment, 11 o'clock at night, for the Guinness Book of Records.
Wow, that's
So nothing existed before 11 o'clock at night. And 4 o'clock the next afternoon, we were signing them at Virgin Records in Marble Arch in London.
wow, that's insane.
Mm. Again, I'd done so many up all nights for 2 or 3 nights with Lemmy that staying up all night is no longer a problem in my life. I mean, most of the book I've written at night. You
Yeah.
know, I tend to start at, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the afternoon and work through to 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Yeah. I love the book, just how I think the insights into your life actually make me feel it's a really different perspective of connecting to Lemmy and Motorhead, because it's just you do such a good job of crafting this experience and taking us there. Um, though I have to say, you've mentioned patchouli a couple times, and oh my God, that's like I can't imagine being around a bunch of people all wearing that. That would be
Well, it was attenuated by the speed, the amphetamines we had up our noses for a start.
okay.
But of course, it was also that every single venue that we did in that 19-date tour obviously smelt like all the venues I've ever played of stale beer, stale cigarettes, because you could smoke in those days.
Right. Of
And of course, a tiny bit of vomit,
course, yes.
right, of course, and the sticky carpet, the marquee and stuff that stuck to our cowboy boots. It was yeah. So yeah. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Oh,
I
not at
tend to
all.
ramble, so you have to stop me if I ramble too much.
No, no, it's super interesting. I love it. Now you went on and you played in a bunch of projects over the years. Are you still actively doing music? Are you, because I know you
Yeah,
into production.
yeah. When I can, I mean, when people ask me to, and I like the project, yeah. I've done two Pink Fairies albums on Cleopatra, and there's a Gunslinger album coming out any minute now as well, with Alan Davey again, the bass player from who's bass player for Hawkwind for 20 years
Oh, cool.
after Lemmy, yeah. And well, that's a funny one because Alan Davey turned up at a Motorhead gig one day with his Rickenbacker bass and walked up to Lemmy and said, "I know all the songs you've ever played." And Lemmy sort of goes, "Nah, come on." He goes, "No, no, really, really, watch me." And he goes, "All right, plug in." Right. So he plugged into Murder One. And sure enough, he played it identical to Lemmy. And then Lemmy just lit, he teared up because he'd never seen anything like it. A fan who was so obsessed that he knew all the, knew all the riffs and could play them like Lemmy. And Lemmy basically took him under his wing and taught him everything he knows. So the Pink Fairies albums are interesting because it's that Lemmy style of bass with a lot of melody, and so it's chord bass and lead bass,
Yeah.
but also because it's on a Pink Fairies album, so it's the Pink Fairies touch. So it's a real mix of the two, which of course was what Motorhead originally was. It was part Hawkwind, part Pink Fairies, and you're the person sitting in front of you on banging away on the kit between them.
That's super
And I
cool.
managed to not go deaf.
That's impressive, because I have to say Motorhead lived up to their name. They were one of the loudest bands I ever saw, but uh always always one of the best shows I've ever seen too.
Well, yeah, well, being a showman is part of what it's all about, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
there's no point in having the guy next door on stage. Nobody wants to see that. They want to see somebody larger than life who comes from another planet.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what you become. You can't help it,
No, it's
particularly
funny.
hanging out with Lemmy.
Lemmy kind of became a demigod in his own way. It's like it's he kind of like stepped into a whole other realm of, like, he became a living mythology or something. I don't even know
Mm,
how to put it.
absolutely. I mean, but again, he wasn't born to be a demigod. He became a demigod. So what's interesting is this period. I mean, when I picked him up from the airport on the 14th of May, 75, 50 years ago this May, um, 50 fucking years doesn't seem like, anyway. But yeah, I mean, he was a car crash. He was a complete shipwreck, with all the sails in tatters. He was in a terrible state because he couldn't believe he'd been sacked. It was the last thing he was expecting. And but a few days later, we talked and talked and talked as usual because we've been together already for, I don't know, from August 74, where I met him at the Speak, And every time he wasn't on tour and I wasn't on tour or wasn't in the studio or whatever, we were hanging out because I was very useful. I had a car, so it's a lot cheaper than taxis. So I was his chauffeur.
Did you two ever jam together before you started Motorhead or?
Never. He'd never heard me play.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, no, he'd never heard me play until the first rehearsal.
So you two were just mates who kind of like got along well. It was like, okay, let's do this. And
Well, it fits into his ethic of how he chose his crews. He chose his crews because the characters could fit in with the family,
hmm,
and then they trained them to do what they needed them to do. So it's a little bit of that, you know.
that's
And of
very
course, I was straight out of the Mitch Mitchell, Keith Moon drum school. Although on Parole, I played it real safe because I was in such a state. But I was expecting to be able to overdub all my toms and cymbals afterwards, you know. But we didn't have, you know, there wasn't the time,
okay.
and so Filthy came in afterwards and replaced me. But again, this is one of those myths that didn't happen. They always say they wiped my drums. It was impossible because the way Dave Edmonds, the producer, wonderful guy, Welsh guy, the way he set up the microphones, there were three sets of microphones as overheads. Plus, there was very little separation because there was no drum booth, and the guitars were in the
Also, there
same
were three
studio as
mics
the
covering
drums.
everything.
What?
There were three mics covering everything, is what you're saying.
No, no. There were mics covering everything already.
Okay.
You know, all these wonderful, beautiful Neumanns on my kit. It was lovely,
Yeah.
and got a great sound on that black kit, that black Ludwig kit, which I incidentally bought off the Four Tops.
Oh, cool.
It started out as a pink champagne kit, and then I had it converted over to black, and all the chrome stuff electrolyzed into black satin as well. So it's a very ghostly kit. It's great. Anyway, so no, there was little or no separation. Therefore, there's no possibility of wiping the drums that were originally there. And that only came out when the new version of On Parole, which I would highly recommend, which Lemmy would have loved too, because he hated the first version, because it ended up being mixed by Fritz Fry, who came out of a little pop band called the Four Pennies. You know, I mean, you can imagine what they sounded like. And so it sounded really flat as far as I'm concerned, the first version. The new version, they've remastered it from the original multi-tracks and stuff. And I got Warner Brothers to send me, because they asked me to do the sleeve notes for the album, and which I did. And just spoke to the production guys and said, listen, could you send me the tracks remastered? I'd be really curious to see what they sound like. And I listened to them and I realized that I always had a very distinctive snare sound, which has a little bit of ring to it, like goong, like that behind the clack. And all over these tracks, I could hear two snare drums, Filthy's really dry snare and my snare.
Okay.
So on the new album, you can hear both drummers.
Oh, I'm gonna check that out then. That's very cool.
The new version of On Parole, it's very interesting, and it works. It sounds a bit like a double drum setup.
It sounds really heavy. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So then you went, and from there, I saw that you did a bunch of work with Gothic bands.
Oh yeah, I loved that. That was such fun. Still is. I love producing. Um, Gothic bands. The one thing about Gothic is that you are free to do anything you fucking want, so long as it's dark. It works. So you're not cornered into is this or is this not speed metal? Is this or is this? You know,
Okay.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. You're not cornered into a straitjacket, a kind of coffin of prearranged what it must be for the fans. You know, so you're free. So you can do Stairway to Heaven that suddenly have grunge guitar. It's more like grunge in a way, you know,
Yeah.
which I adore as well. You know, I mean, Soundgarden, you know, Black Hole Sun. Come on,
Oh yeah.
whoa, you know, and lovely guys. I hung out with them a night when I was working for A&M Records in Paris. But yeah. So Gothic's a lot of fun. A wedding anniversary, particularly wonderful band out of Vienna. Well, I went to the 35th anniversary of when I produced them in Vienna last March, and hung out with them, and it's great. They're really wonderful on stage. And they've got a new band called Decamer, Kammer, which is well worth checking out. It's really seriously interesting. And the guy's got this wonderful baritone voice. That was the other kind of thing I was a little bit disappointed. I hope the fans don't hate me for saying this. And if they do, fuck them. Lemmy had a great voice. He had a voice which was somewhere between John Lennon and Elvis Costello. It was really tuneful, which you can hear on I Ain't No Nice Guy Anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of other tracks, like not the acoustic version with Mickey D, but the version where you got guitars and all the rest of it. And you can hear he had this great voice. But of course, the thing about that was we were so loud at the beginning that the monitor engineers couldn't handle it. Therefore,
Oh,
he
he was
ended
basically
up
shouting
having to
above.
scream at the
Yeah.
top of his lungs to hear himself. So he ended up kind of cornered into this thing. The fans loved it, and he ended up singing pretty much for the rest of his life like that.
I,
But we used to sing, Beatles songs together in harmony and stuff back at his place in his horrible, smelly flat in 28 Blenheim Crescent in Ladbroke Grove. And we used to go back there after the speakeasy or whatever, and sing our hearts out, until the dawn rose, and the cold white light started creeping through the dirty curtains.
when you talk about his voice, I think about the song "God Was Never on Your Side."
Yeah,
That's one of my favorite
absolutely.
Motorhead songs. It's just he's so soulful in that.
That's right.
It's so deep.
So as I say, I'm. It's kind of. I wish he hadn't. I mean, obviously, I love his voice. I love everything he's done. And blah. I love Motorhead all the way through. All the way through from the beginning to the end. But I've got wriggling around inside me is this thing of, well, what would he have been? What would it have sounded like if he'd have used his voice a bit more melodically, like he could. You know.
I never saw his band Headcat, but I heard that was kind of where he played around with some of that stuff.
I've heard the recordings of, and that kind of. I think that's why why he needed Headcat. Which of course, rockabilly. I mean, I love the Cramps.
Yeah.
Psychobilly. I worked with them as well. They were great. Poison Ivy and Lux Interior. As soon as they hit Paris, we had to go to the cemetery.
That's so cool. Now you went and and then at one point like you went and you were production manager for Ray Charles.
Yep, yep. That was well. What that was like most of my life. It kind of fell into my lap. I mean, seriously, I haven't had a game plan for my life ever. I still don't. Right. Um, I just end up being offered these things. A guy rang me up one day and said, "Listen, we're doing the merger between Fiat Agriculture Worldwide and Ford Agriculture Worldwide to become New Holland, which is the biggest agriculture manufacturing, combine harvest and all that shit. And we're looking for an artist to surprise the 3,000 presidents from all over the world of each company, 1,500 of each, and their wives, 6,000 people. And so I was flown to Milan in a private plane, like so every 10, 15 days, to talk with the heads of Fiat to come to some kind of consensus on who we'd choose. And we went through, Paul McCartney, Tina Turner, all these other obvious, Joe Cocker at the time, all these others. And finally, I just sort of said, fuck it. I know that the European manager of Ray Charles. Would that be of interest? And they jumped on it. And it was the only time in my life doing events where I've had complete carte blanche, an open checkbook.
Mhm.
Thank God. And yes, so we ended up doing the biggest sit-down dinner since 1926 in London. 6,000 people served by 1,200 waiters out of 13 kitchens at Earls Court in London, which is a massive place where I saw Pink Floyd, doing Dark Side of the Moon. Well, I worked with them as well, as you probably saw. I was produced by them when I was 20 or so. Yeah, 20. Um, in a band called WH Pierce Band, but that's another story. And yes, so Earl's Court is a massive cavernous place. Unfortunately, it's been pulled down, and so we did it there, and with a bull ring stage, in the centre of the audience, surrounded by all these big round tables. But the stars of the show for me were the waiters. It was the organisers got the waiters from the Queen. They literally hired a massive amount of staff as waiters from the Queen, and they were really good. They were really good. Incredible to watch 6,000 people being served at the same time, the same plate, etc. And as a big surprise was Ray Charles. So I booked him on that and became his production manager on that. Worked together again later. But on that one, of course, he was a big surprise, and all the lights went down, and suddenly, blowing Georgia, and the whole place was electric.
Did people know he was going to be the entertainment or not?
No, no,
Oh, that must have been
it's top
mind-blowing.
secret. It's top secret. It blew their minds up.
Oh, that's incredible. That would have been an amazing event to be at.
And then I worked with him few years later. I think that was '94 in London, and I worked again with him in Paris for end of year thing for a big university here, and I booked him on that. And I booked him I hired for me the best 15-piece horn section in Europe, and they were fucking phenomenal. The people who did. There was like the guy who did Baker Street, that guy,
Yeah.
and all these, and it was amazing. The first rehearsal, or rather the sound check, he wanted to test them out. So he gave them the most complicated fucking jazz thing you could ever imagine brass playing. And in the middle, suddenly his arms shot up in the air, and everyone froze and stopped, like slammed on the brakes. And he pointed between the eyes of the guy, and he said, "You played B flat instead of B."
Oh my God.
Right? Oh, oh, Ray. I mean, seriously, 3 hours was Ray was like 6 months university. Amazing, amazing guy, amazing guy. And I booked him the onstage sound engineer, because Ray never used any monitors apart from the little monitor he had. One monitor for the Raylets, and one monitor for the drummer, and one monitor for the guitarist. That was it. And so I set up a full, what was at the time a full normal monitoring rig, and booked for me, one of the best monitoring engineers in the world. And so, the first time I met him, I just sat on his drum stool next to him, and he said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Lucas, and you're Ray, and we're going to get on. I'm not going to lie to you." Right? And of course, the whole place froze. It's Mr. Charles. It's Mr. Charles. And I said, "No, it's not. It's Ray, and I'm Lucas. We piss and shit the same way." And Ray laughed, and we got on. Anyway, so there we are at the Louvre in the center of Paris, right? The big museum, and they've got big conference suites and stuff. And we were in there, and with the brass section set up and everything set up. I said, "Ray, you're going to have to trust me on this." He goes, "Okay, I don't like it already." And I gave one wink, because I had codes with the sound engineer, so I gave one wink for half a dB, right? And he put the monitoring system up half a dB, and Ray's his arms shot in the air again. He said, "Stop! What's that, Lucas?" I said, "It's the best monitoring you'll ever have in the world. Trust me." He said, "Well, all right." Right? And sure enough, I gave another two winks to go up another couple of dBs, and he loved it. You could hear a pin drop on stage. It was so beautiful. He said, "Who's behind the desk?" I said, "I hired the monitoring engineer for the most difficult woman in the world." "Who's that?" I said, "Shirley Bassey." I went, "Oh." Oh. Her reputation preceded her. And sure enough, this Australian guy, Dave, or whatever his name was fucking wonderful. It was great. Anyway, I digress.
That's great. Is there anybody you haven't worked with that you really would like to?
They're all dead.
Well, we could resurrect one. Who would it
Oh,
be?
there are loads. There are loads. Um, I don't know. Um, I mean, there's obviously got to be a few gothic bands that I'd love to work with, because again, it's that you're talking about the way I write. That's the way I think. I think in Technicolor. I don't know why. I just do. I dream in Technicolor, and I dream in both languages as well. So I'm completely bilingual. And being a drummer, you got a six-track mind, right?
Right.
Four tracks, one track for each part of your body. Two arms, two legs, four tracks, and then you got the track that where you're listening to the other people, and then you got the track which is the overview, like When You're Dead, which I've been 5 times, where you're floating above your bed. To listen to the whole picture. So my mind works like that. God knows how, but I don't really question these things, I just do, just do. I mean, seriously, Eric, I love my life. It's been a great life so far, and it's none of it has been easy.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect life to be easy. I started off as a complete, you know, a handicapped person, so I never expected life to be easy. But having died a few times from asthma and waking up with uh, a adrenaline shot direct into the heart, being brought back to life a few times. Um, I don't know. I just always start at square one with all the background you've got every
Yeah.
time. So every project I look on, I'm still a fucking kid, man. Inside me, if you like, I had a dream. I went to see a shrink for 3 years because I was just really not happy with myself. I was just fucking up too much. I mean, I was still doing stuff, and working with James Rand, all sorts of people, but I was never happy with the way I'd really achieved things. And so I saw a shrink for 3 years, and I remember I came back and it was asleep, and I woke up in the middle of a dream, and I could see a child at the other end of the room, and I recognized him. He was me at like the age of 7 or 9 or something, and he was looking really upset. And I held out my hand to him and took his hand, and I said, "Listen, you and I have got to get on. It's time that you and I really need you. I need all of your silly enthusiasm, and I need all that in my life, because that's my creative side is my child, you know." And we became friends. And so my child lives in me like a little 7 or 9 year old. And we got a deal. You don't get to drive my car, you know. you know?
That,
You don't get to drive my life, but you are absolutely welcome to participate everywhere you can.
that's super cool. I could feel that in my heart as you were describing that. That really touched me. Thank you. Um,
Well, I really wish everybody got in touch with their child in them, because everyone's got that child there, and that child is very frustrated. They've been squashed and sat on and criticised all their childhood, being put through the ropes to learn about life and learn history and all the other stuff. And in some strange way, at the age of 15 or something, when you're going through your adolescent period, you kind of forget that child because you're ashamed to be small. Whereas in fact, we should actually develop that child, because that child is probably the most fun thing we ever had in our lives. And I've known a lot of crazy people, including Lemmy, who didn't have a good childhood as such. I mean, he had a great childhood, but he'd lost his father, left when he was a few months old. Wasn't easy. But so I believe in befriending one's child. I think that's good.
yeah, I can really feel the joy and definitely the creativity comes through in your writing. Just fantastic. Um,
Oh, thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it, man.
oh, yeah, I can't wait to read the whole book. I mean, and just to put it out there is even if people aren't interested in Motorhead, the book is worth reading.
Thank you.
It's
For
just
me, the
a great
challenge is the
storyteller.
crossover, because I think the fans are going to buy it. I hope, and they may criticize me for I don't know, for showing Lemmy as he was when I knew him. And also, I also do parallels. There's a parallel in the book between me and him, where me at the age of 12, he's at the age of 19 or 20. So I'm kind of saying this is what Lemmy's doing at time, this is what I'm doing at time, and then we kind of join up at the speakeasy, and then we're together for a whole length of the book, and then we separate again. But he used to come to all the gigs that I played with the bands afterwards.
Oh, that's so cool.
I mean, he used to literally cajole all the people in the pub to fill up the gigs I was playing and stuff. And he came to the Dingwalls gigs and all that. No, he is, we were very close afterwards. I mean, obviously we had a falling out immediately afterwards, where it was a bit dangerous for me as well because of the bikers hanging around. But then we got back on board, and we're very very close. And used to hang out at the bar, and obviously at his one arm bandit,
Yeah,
pulling his, of course.
that's really nice to hear. Um, I'm just, what are you listening to today? What is there any music that?
Well, I'm in the book at the moment. I'm literally today. I'm on the last of the chapters. I'm on the last 8 chapters at the moment. Doing the last twiddly bits to get it how I feel I want to release it. And then, of course, so every chapter I'm listening to the stuff I was playing or working on or producing at the time. So at the moment, I'm listening to Ekaterina Velika, wonderful Yugoslav band from originally from Belgrade, and that was a wonderful thing. Again, a wonderful baritone voice, incredible. And he also had a war cry, just like Bob Marley. Bob Marley's sort of blood curdling, thing like that. And a fucking amazing guitarist, really, really good. They're just a little 4-piece, but they were the biggest band in Yugoslavia at the time, and that was in 1990, just before the war kicked off. And unfortunately, the war kicked off, so we got them a deal with CBS at Medem, where I'd worked, as you know, um, and then the war kicked off, so we couldn't get them out of Yugoslavia, or we didn't manage to get them out of Yugoslavia. And in '94, 4 years later, sorry, yes, is that right? Yes, 1994. 4 years later, CBS was still interested, so we picked up the phone to Milan, the singer, but unfortunately, he just died from cancer. So that was banged on its head as well. But there've been loads. Seriously, this book is not just about success. It's all. I mean, Churchill, of course.
Oh yeah,
Right. It's his definition of success: going from failure to failure and never giving up.
it's like I'm actually reading a Churchill biography right now, and I can see
Oh,
that.
excellent, excellent. I mean, so
Fascinating.
funny.
Yeah.
What a wit! What a wit! I mean, a war criminal as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, Dublin. What he did in Dublin was terrible. Quite apart from the Dardanelles. I mean, oh dear, oh dear, and a real racist. Everything I detest. But I love the guy because, for a start, he was there. Thank
It's
fuck he was
fascinating
there.
to read about. I mean, just a really complicated, messy individual for sure.
Yeah. Well. Again, his father, Sir Randolph or Lord Randolph Churchill, thought his son was a complete waster, and so Churchill spent his whole life trying to prove to his father he wasn't, which is also a bit similar to mine. My father was very very hard because he'd been born in abject poverty, and his father died of TB. My grandfather, and my father grew up literally living above a stable in the loft with the hay, with his 2 sisters, one of whom was severely handicapped in her leg, and with a alcoholic mother. So that was where I came from. So obviously, my father did the best he could. He had no experience of a father at all, and so he did the best he could. He had a great heart, but he was just hard as nails. He wanted me to be tough, which of course, me being severely handicapped as well, it was a bit difficult. So again, I've got that thing of trying to prove him wrong. Pathetic as it may sound, but yes, the book is full of things that didn't work, me spinning out a Motorhead out of my brains on speed, um, and gradually clawing my way back up again and getting into other bands and then the Warsaw Pact, etc. So it's up and down. It's a real rocky road. It's like it's a roller coaster.
No, it's I can't wait to read the rest of it. Now you're such a good author. What are you reading? I'm assuming you have stuff that you really are drawn to, or
Uh, I'd highly recommend Reckless, Chrissy Hines' book,
okay.
but and Patti Smith's Just Kids. Um, Viv Albertini from the Slits book, and all of those I loved. But and of course, Life, Keith Richards, um, Paul McCartney's book, Jeff Emerick, the Beatles engineer. But that's very technical, very technical, but it's fascinating for me, fascinating. Um, but I don't get any time to read at the moment because I'm writing, and also I don't particularly want to get get it too influenced by other people's writing, other
Yeah,
people's styles. But I think also the way I wrote it, why I wrote it this way, was that I was frustrated that every book I every book I read, blah, every book I read didn't have what I'm trying to put in this book, which is how does it feel to live it?
yeah,
I haven't seen one fucking description of what it felt like to be on stage, seeing from a drummer's point of actually beating the shit out of the Skins, and what it felt like to be on stage at the Hammersmith Odeon or wherever, and that feeling of and the feeling of being, I don't know, in a pub back in the 70s, what it smelt like, what it looked like, what the characters were like, all that. So I was missing all the. It was a bit like a film without the pictures or something. It was like a film script, but without the description of what the decor was like. So I was very frustrated. I've always been very frustrated, but that with books, and another book I love is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Of course, Hunter S. Thompson, William Burroughs, The Naked Lunch, On the Road, Jack Kerouac. All of those books. So I'm not a great reader. Oh,
oh,
Shogun, James Clavell.
I
Oh,
just have you read King Rat?
oh yeah, the
I just
first book.
I just finished that. Oh my God, that was incredible. I've read four of his books, and I'm trying not to read them all because they're so good that I don't want it to end.
That's James Clavell is probably the writer who inspired me the most.
Okay, now I can see that because I mean, he is just I think like my Taipei has my favorite ending of any book I've ever read because
Agreed.
I got to the end of the book and I thought, no, you can't end.
No,
And he
I'm
twisted it.
cheated.
And I'm like, oh shit, what did you got me, right? It's like, but wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, but yes, I mean there you got, and of course the parallels in Shogun as well.
Yeah.
The way it's layered, where you bounce between Blackthorn and the girl and
Yeah.
Teranaga or whatever his name is, the Shogun. All of that. I love the structural thing. Oh, and another thing is, have you seen The Imitation Game
No,
with Cumberbatch, the film?
no, I haven't seen that.
It's about Bletchley Park, which was, if you like, there were two places which are the most secret places in Britain. One which my mother was commandant of, which was Tempsford, which was and the other which was, hang on a second, I'm going to ignore this. I'm not going to touch anything.
All right.
Um, but and the other one was Bletchley Park, which was decoding the Nazi Enigma machine, if
Oh,
that rings a bell.
yes, very much so.
Does it matter if I do it this way round? Does it fuck up your
Um,
film?
there we go. I'm getting a fuller
Okay,
picture
I'm
from
sorry
back
about
just a
that.
little bit.
It's just a bit like Piccadilly Circus here at the
There we
moment
go. Now I can see it better.
because different countries are coming in with different publishers for the book, and I'm really happy. And so I'm really hoping that I find the same quality of publishers as I've found in France. And I'm on my third publisher now.
Yeah.
The last publisher, he looked ideal. It was a very strange one because I'd been a guest, special guest of a thing called Punk Is Not Dead, right?
Mm.
And Punk Is Not Dead is run by, it's an association run, typically French, run by people obsessed with punk, with their ex-punks from back in the day. And and they do things like talks on Dame Vivienne Westwood and the effect that she had on society, not just the costumes, right? Really interesting. And and a girl there who I got chummy with said, "Oh, you must call this guy." And I went, "Oh God, no, it's going to be a small publisher, which I love, but I can't work for 6 years and sell 1,300 books. It's not possible. I'm not rich, so I have to earn money." It's always been my pride. I still rent this place. We've got a lovely little house, but I rent it, so I have to cough up the accas, as they say in English. You have to, chuck out 2 grand a month. So I ignored this, thinking that it's some little publisher. And at the time, I got another publisher who was ready to sign me, who then COVID came along, and the guy who wanted to sign me was in hospital. And
Oh,
so the publisher sent me a mail saying, "Look, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to withdraw because he's in hospital and we don't know how long it's going to be." Blah. So I said, "Fair enough." And I had an agent at the time in Canada, great guy, and I called him up and said, "Listen, the last lot have pulled out, but there's some guy who's been chasing me for 6 weeks, and he really wants to do it." He said, "Who is it?" And I told him his name, and he said, "Do you know who he is?" And I said, "I don't know. Of course not. He's some head of the detective series novels in a big publisher." And he goes, "Yeah, when he left that, when he got headhunted into the new publishing house he's in, um, he had 1 page in the equivalent of the New York Times and 2 pages in the equivalent of, I don't know, some more independent but big broadsheet." And me being me, cynical as ever, I just immediately, I could see Maigret. I could see a sort of Columbo type character. Right? He wouldn't understand anything I'm doing
right.
anyway. And no, he sent me a picture, and this guy with long grey hair, leather jacket, and a Motorhead T-shirt.
Oh, perfect.
So theoretically, we were meant to get on until a year and a half later. He didn't want to read anything apart from the synopsis that you've read, or at the time.
Right.
Um, and so we came to the big crunch moment, which I've been dreading. And I turn up at their massive offices, and down one end of the long table is 150 pages, and this end is 100 pages. I look at it and goes, "What's that lot?" He said, "Oh, that won't be in the book." And I looked at it, and that was all me, all the
Oh,
stuff outside Motorhead. He just wanted Motorhead. He was obsessed by Lemmy, and he just wanted Lemmy. That was it. And so I left and had to negotiate my rights and all the rest of it, and was meant to pay back the advance and all. It was a nightmare. So I spent a year and a half going through hell until I came up with this one.
oh,
And they are the complete opposite. I've got 6 people working with me. The publicist comes out of Sony Music, knows exactly where I'm at. I've got a 19 date book tour spread over between April and July, all over France and Belgium and stuff. And every single library signing, book signing, whatever they call it, I'm going to be going to the local pub, local rock pub, and meeting all the fans, doing meet and greet, question and answers, and signatures of whatever they want me to sign there. And that I never sign like that. I always sign in Gothic, so I take my time because I figure, it's there 5-10 minutes with me. Fucking respect that. I mean, respect. In England, we talk about the bums on seats. They're the people who buy the tickets to come and see you, and frankly, they pay for our drinks and our rent. Respect. Respect to the fans, always, always, always. Without them, we're nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I've often walked off stage and people have gone, "Whoa, I really wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be a musician." I go, "Everybody can't be on stage, otherwise there's nobody in the audience, or vice versa." You
True.
know,
Well, hey, if people want to follow your work, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
I'd say Instagram.
Okay.
Instagram. It's Lucas Fox, all attached underscore Fox. Really easy to find.
All right, cool. Um,
So the hunt is on for an American publisher, and I need to find a family that I can feel good with. Just like I've got in France. I really need some really nice people who know what they're doing, have got big distribution, and enough money to do it properly. Um, and I'm touching wood at the moment. I think I might have found the one for UK, and we're working on Germany, obviously, Italy, Spain, South America, and Norway, I think. And then I've just got Serbia and Greece probably coming in as well. So I'm seriously looking for the publisher in the States, because I love the States, and I'd love it to come out there.
no,
You
let me
know,
know if you come to San Francisco because I'll definitely come see you because
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if we manage to find an American publisher, I'll obviously be doing a little bit book tour there as well, with great pleasure. And I love San Francisco. I did actually work with Bill Graham.
oh wow.
Yeah, I produced a whole series of concerts. Again, it started out of kind of a silly idea. When I left MEDEM, which is the biggest music convention in the world, I did 3 years as their technical director and programmer. And that all finished because he sold it to an English company, and the English company, I was part of the old team. They didn't want me. Yeah. And so I went back to my place here around the corner at the time, and kind of a bit, deflated, thinking this is fucked up. And on telly, there's the morning breakfast show or whatever. I'm sitting in bed eating my muesli as usual, with my tea with a big lump of ginger and honey in it, and they're talking on and on and on about the French Revolution that's coming up, the bicentenary. And I think, oh fuck, 1989 is not going to be a good year for me. Nobody needs a bilingual, bicultural, production head. They're all going to use French ones. Of course they are. They don't need somebody who's got both languages. And I go down into my letterbox, 3 stories down, three floors down, and pick up my letters, and there is my invitation to the New Music Seminar, which is Tom Silverman and I can't remember the other guy's name. Lovely guys, Tommy Boy, right? Tommy Boy Records.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been flown over there several times by MEDEM and stuff, so I knew them well, and they had their convention going. And the dates of the convention were the 14th of July, 1989, through to the 18th or 19th of July. 14th of July was the French Revolution, the
Right.
date of. And so I immediately thought, well, you know what? I'm going to try and put a show together, to end all shows, taking French artists over to New York. And so we did the Palladium, sold it out. Great. And so did a small one the year after in 1990. And then in 91, I toured it, did Los Angeles, San Francisco, where I worked with Bill Graham at Warfield. I did a World Music Day at the Warfield Theatre, and actually got to work with Bill. And what a lovely man. Fucking amazing.
And the Warfield is where I always saw Motorhead.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
All right. All right. Did you
yeah.
ever go into the management office?
I've never been in there, no.
Oh, right, because it's a long corridor. It was in those days a long corridor, and I was sitting opposite Bill, chatting away. He loved what I was doing, and I've always loved what he was doing. And I'd always heard since I was 15 or 16, heard about Bill and his temper, and the way he could shout, and it was really loud. So I was very curious about this. So there I am sitting opposite me, and the telephone rings. And he goes bright red, puts the phone down and says, "Stand up." I go, "Okay." I stand up, and he stands next to me and touches my hand and said, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Really softly, really sweet, you know. And the door at the end of his office opens, and there's this ex-Vietnam veteran, like, you know, Marine Corps
Right.
brick shit house, right? And he walks in, and suddenly Bill opens his mouth, and this 16,000 watt PA system belts out of him. It was deafening. It was absolutely deafening, right? And this 6 foot Marine shrunk to about 5 foot, and apologized and humbly went out the door and closed the door. And Bill just turned to me really calmly and said, "Do you think that was effective?" So I'd seen Bill let his tiger out. It was great. I learned the lesson. I used that tiger in me a few years later when I was running a big show.
That's fantastic. Well, hey, Lucas, thank you so much. I can't wait for the book to come out. It's been just an absolute pleasure talking to you today. This
Well,
is,
me too, Eric. I love the questions, and a real pleasure. Nice to know you. You know,
yes,
stay in touch. You've
definitely.
got my telephone number. Don't hesitate. If
All
there's
right.
anything I can do for you in France, I'll do it.
Well,
And
thank you.
it's absolutely delightful to be in touch with you.
It has
And
been.
so you know, please say hi to all the listeners on my behalf. You know, keep rocking, and a massive hi HIGH to all my motor sisters and motor brothers, you know, and the headbangers out there, and all the people who aren't headbangers, you know, all the people on the other sides who are curious about this great period. Because I mean, Notting Hill Gate, right? There was two places in the world: Notting Hill Gate and Haight Ashbury. And Notting Hill Gate had the biggest density of musicians and bands started in the world at the time, including Pink Floyd, Free, Motorhead, of course, Hawkwind, Pink Fairies, of course. But I mean, loads of them. And they were all hanging out. And of course, a couple of years later, 1 year after Motorhead, you've got all the members of the Clash, the Damned,
Yeah.
the Close Mates, you know, Generation X, you know, and of course, you know, then turned up the American contingent with Chrissy Hind and the New York Dolls, and you know, it was just like full. All the pubs were just full of it, you
Yeah.
know, and of course, you know, McLaren and all that lot down in Kings Road. So, yeah, good times, good times. But I
Cool.
don't miss them. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I was just so. It's like when anybody dies and they go, "Oh, this is terrible." I go, "How lucky you were to have shared the same airspace with these
Mm.
people."
Well put.
You know, don't ever regret somebody's death. If it's too early, of course, it's terrible. But in the end, how lucky we were to have shared the same airspace with these people. And how lucky I was to know them.
Yeah.
Lovely guy.
Well, thanks so much, Lucas.
My pleasure. Thank you. A real pleasure.